James Callahan wasn't the kind of man who noticed much anymore. A single dad to a 5-year-old firecracker named Ellie. He was used to juggling too much with too little. His hands were always full, either with tools at the auto shop where he worked 12-hour shifts, or with a tangled ponytail he was attempting to fix before preschool drop-off. Life wasn't easy, but James had grown used to that. Every Thursday evening, James took Ellie to a small, quiet diner across from the gas station. It wasn't much, but it was their ritual. Pancakes at sunset. Ellie loved the syrup. James loved the 15 minutes of calm, of pretending everything was fine. That's when he noticed her. The waitress. She moved like a shadow. Quiet, precise, always watching but never meeting eyes. Her uniform was neat, her hair tied back in a simple braid, but it wasn't her clothes or her posture that stood out. It was her absence of a smile. Not once, in the 6 weeks James and Ellie had come in, had he seen her smile. Not for the cook behind the counter. Not for the older couples with their coffee cups. Not for the toddlers with crayons. She would take orders politely, refill mugs without a sound, nod when someone said thanks. But her lips never curved, and her eyes looked like they carried something heavy. James didn't say anything at first. Who was he to intrude? Everyone had their burdens. But that Thursday night, Ellie reached for her lemonade and said out loud, "Daddy, why doesn't the nice lady ever smile?" James froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. The waitress was standing right there. Ellie didn't mean any harm. Kids never do. But James saw the way the woman's eyes widened for just a second, before she turned and walked away, quicker than usual. Later, when she brought the check, James looked up and said gently, "Hey, I'm sorry about earlier. My daughter's curious, that's all." The waitress paused, hesitating like she wasn't sure how to respond. Then she nodded slowly. "No offense taken," she said. "She's sweet." Her voice was soft, but it carried something more, like someone trying very hard to stay afloat in deep water. James wanted to say something else. Ask if she was okay. But the look in her eyes made it clear not tonight. That night, after Ellie fell asleep with syrup still on her chin, James sat in the living room and stared at the ceiling. The image of the waitress lingered in his mind. The emptiness behind her polite nod. The way she disappeared into herself when anyone looked too long. The next week, he brought Ellie again. Same booth. Same lemonade. Same waitress. Still no smile. But something was different. She looked tired. Not the kind of tired from a long shift, but the kind that seeps into your bones. James noticed a small bruise near her wrist as she set the napkins down. It was faint, but not old. Her sleeve slipped as she turned, revealing another near her elbow. James felt something twist in his stomach. He didn't want to assume. People fall. Accidents happen. But that wasn't what this felt like. "Are you okay?" he asked as she filled Ellie's glass. His voice was low, meant only for her. She looked at him for a second longer than usual. That's when James saw it. Real fear. The kind of fear that people hide behind polite words and tight smiles. The kind of fear that doesn't go away when the shift ends. "I'm fine," she said quickly, too quickly. But James had seen that look before, years ago, in his sister's eyes, before she finally left her abusive boyfriend. "Listen," he said, keeping his tone calm, "I don't mean to pry, but if you ever need help, I've been there. I know what it looks like." The waitress blinked, stunned for a moment. Then she turned and walked away. James figured that was it. He'd crossed a line. Maybe they wouldn't be welcome anymore. But the next Thursday, she was the one who came to their table, holding 2 lemonades, one for Ellie and one for James, already poured, and this time she stayed. "Can I sit?" she asked quietly. James nodded, surprised. She looked at Ellie, who gave her a wide, syrupy smile. Then she looked at James. "My name's Rachel," she said. "And you were right." She lifted her sleeve slightly, just enough for him to see the truth she could no longer hide. "I don't have anyone else to talk to," she whispered. James leaned in, his voice steady. Rachel's hands trembled slightly as she stirred her coffee. The diner had emptied out, the glow of neon flickering in the reflection of the windows. Ellie had dozed off in the booth, curled up with a crayon still in her hand. James sat across from Rachel, arms crossed gently, his eyes filled with concern. Not judgment, not pity, just quiet care. "I don't know why I'm telling you this," Rachel said, barely above a whisper. "I haven't told anyone in 3 years." James stayed silent, knowing better than to interrupt. "It started out okay," she continued, her voice thin. "David, he was charming. Always knew the right thing to say. At first, he made me feel like I mattered, like I was someone worth loving." She laughed bitterly. That didn't last. Rachel rubbed the side of her arm, unconsciously tracing a bruise that had long since faded. He got controlling. First it was just small things. What I wore, who I talked to. Then it got physical. Once, he slammed my hand in a door because I answered a call from my sister. I lied to the doctor, said it was an accident. Eventually, I stopped going out. I thought if I stayed quiet, he'd calm down. James clenched his fists under the table. He'd heard stories like this before, but it never got easier. "I tried to leave once," she said. "Packed a bag, had a friend ready to take me in. He found out." Her voice cracked. "That's when he really snapped. Said if I ever tried again, he'd make sure I disappeared. Said he'd hurt anyone who helped me too." James's breath caught. He looked over at Ellie, sleeping soundly. He couldn't imagine the kind of terror Rachel must have lived with every day. "I don't even know who I am anymore," she admitted. "I used to be an artist. Loved painting. Haven't touched a brush in years. Now I just survive shift to shift. Smile on the outside, panic on the inside." She glanced at James. "Then your daughter asked me why I never smiled." Her lips curved, barely, into something fragile. "And I realized I couldn't even remember the last time I had." James leaned forward. "Rachel, I don't think it's an accident we ended up here. Maybe you were meant to hear those words. From Ellie? And maybe I was meant to notice. Because you don't have to keep living like this." She shook her head. "I've tried. But he watches me, follows me after work. He always knows where I am." James paused, thinking. "You ever file a police report?" Her eyes darkened. "He has friends in the department." "I'm not safe going that route." James thought quickly. His brother Aaron was a social worker in a neighboring county, discreet and trustworthy. He didn't want to push Rachel, but if she wanted out, she'd need support, and she'd need it now. "There's someone I can call," James said softly. "Someone who can get you help quietly. They know shelters, legal options, people who don't scare easy." Rachel hesitated, fear etched across her face. Then she looked at Ellie again, sleeping peacefully. "I don't have kids," she said, voice cracking. "But if I did, I wouldn't want them to see me like this. I wouldn't want them to grow up thinking this was normal." James nodded. "Then let's get you out." "Tonight?" Rachel looked at him, wide-eyed. "Now." "You said he watches you," James replied. "But if you don't go home tonight, if he doesn't expect it, that's your window." For a few seconds, Rachel didn't say anything. Then she nodded. They moved quickly. James called Aaron, who confirmed a secure shelter with an open room about 40 minutes away. While Rachel packed her things quietly in the back, James told the cook, an older woman named Delia, who seemed to know more than she let on, that Rachel had to leave for personal reasons. Delia nodded and hugged Rachel without a word. It was all the goodbye she could offer in that moment. Rachel climbed into James's truck with nothing but a small duffel bag. Ellie remained asleep in the back seat, unaware her words had shifted the course of a woman's life. As they drove through the silent night, Rachel looked out the window, gripping the seat tightly. "You're really doing this?" James said, glancing over. "I still feel like I'm dreaming," she whispered. "But for the first time in years, I don't feel stuck." When they reached the shelter, Aaron was waiting. Tall, warm, professional. He greeted Rachel kindly, gave her time, no pressure. She didn't have to give details yet. She just needed rest and safety. James watched as she disappeared into the building, her figure small but no longer shrinking. 2 weeks passed before he saw her again. It was Thursday night. Same booth, same diner, but this time Rachel wasn't wearing her uniform. She walked in, head higher, hair loose over her shoulders. There were faint circles under her eyes, but her posture was straighter. She sat down across from James and Ellie, who squealed in delight. "Miss Rachel," Ellie said, giggling, and for the first time,
James saw it.
A full, real smile. "I've missed you guys," Rachel said. James nodded. "We've missed you too." She told him about the shelter, the therapy sessions, the lawyer who was helping her get a protective order. She'd even picked up a paintbrush again, just a few sketches, but it felt like waking up from a coma. "I don't know where I'm going next," she said, "but I know I'm not going back, and that's enough for now." James smiled. "You don't have to know everything right away. One day at a time." She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Thank you for noticing, for not looking away." James's throat tightened. He looked at Ellie, then back at Rachel. "You reminded me, too," he said, "that sometimes the smallest things, like asking why someone doesn't smile, can change everything."